Hi everybody, welcome back to episode 2 of the Doctor and the Dog Man podcast. So how have you been over the last few weeks?
I've been good. What is it, nearly 3 weeks since I've seen you?
Yes, yep, will be.
No, I've been good, I've been busy. I had a litter born the day after we recorded the last podcast.
Amazing.
Well, it was hard, it's been hard work with them because the mother's not had full milk. So I've had to sort of top them up every now and again. So I've been on puppy duty pretty much constantly. I don't think I've slept in my bed. No, I don't think I've slept in my bed for a full night since.
Trials and tribulations of dog breeding.
Yeah, you got to look after the little ones. But yeah, it's been busy. It's been really weird actually because after we spoke and did the last episode, I had sort of 4 or 5 conversations with different people. They brought subjects up that related directly back to what we talked about. And it was really weird because these subjects kept coming up. I wasn't bringing them up. I'll give you an example. I had somebody I was talking to, and they sort of were saying to me about their situation with their dog and could I give them some advice. I said, yeah, sure. So they were talking and they told me where they got the dog from, and then they were saying that within 12 months the dog had started getting aggressive. Then they brought some trainers in and they didn't really help, and the dog just didn't get any better, and they ended up having to put the dog to sleep.
Wow.
So they were saying to me, said, what do you think? I said, well, what do you mean, what do I think? And they said, well, do you have any thoughts on what we've told you? And I said, well, I've got a couple. I said, there's 2 or 3 things. I said, the first thing is I think your dog's come from a puppy farm, from the things you've told me. Okay. I said, and obviously because of that, you have got everything from, you don't know whether that dog's been bred, it could be mother and brother and sister, it could be father and daughter that's been bred. You just don't know what the genetics are like. Okay. And then you've got things like epigenetics. If the mother's not been looked after properly, she can transfer some of those fears and those stresses onto the puppies. So I said, that's probably where your first problem's coming from. And then I said to them, the next thing I said is that I don't know how good your trainers were. They might not have been very good. At which they jumped down my throat, which is what the point. It was really weird because then they were going, no, the trainers were brilliant. The trainers were absolutely brilliant, first class. And that's the bit that sort of flicked back because it was just like in the moment of stress, you said, didn't you? You sort of make a decision.
Yes.
So I said, okay, well then if you're telling me that the trainers are first class, I said, then the third point I've got is that you're the weak link. And they sort of looked at me and I said, well, if the trainers are as good as you're telling me, then your dog should have got better. But if your dog didn't get better, it means that you haven't implemented the things that the trainer was telling you to do. Yeah. I said, and any good trainer would make sure that you were implementing it or capable of implementing it, because that's what's going to make the difference for the dog. I said, you never said the dog got any better, it just didn't make any improvements. So I said, you're the weak link, which I don't think they were expecting. But I was saying to them, I then said to them, what sort of things were you doing with this trainer? And I always ask, the question I always ask is, what's your marker word? It is such a great leveler. You ask it to somebody who's coming to you with a dog and they say they've done all these training and bits and pieces, and what's your marker word? And they'll tell me, and they'll say it. And 9 out of 10 times they say it and the dog just ignores them. So it's like your marker word is useless. Yeah. Or you say to them, as in this case, what's your marker word? And they look at you a bit blank, which then is a great testament to how good the trainer actually is. Because if you're not using marker words, then you really don't know an awful lot about training, in my opinion. So they said sort of, well, we sent the dog to place board a lot. Is that a marker word? I went, no. And once they said that, I realised what they were trying to do. Yeah. So I said, explain to me what you were doing. So, well, we sent the dog to the place board and we'd reward the dog for being on there and sitting on there, then lying down on there. And at this point, I knew exactly what they were trying to do. And it's just like, nah, this will not work. So I said to them, did you do this outside or did you just do it inside? Oh, no, we only did it inside. I said, okay. I said, so what else did you do? Well, not much. We just kept extending the duration of the dog sitting on this place bed, which again goes back to Gilly, the same thing. Yeah. trying to fear aggression, making him sit on a place board.
Yeah, for long periods of time.
Not going to work. Not going to work. You're not changing the dog's state of mind. So I then thought, right. Anyway, I said to them, what did the trainer say to you about, because obviously your dog's aggressive outside but not inside. So tell me, what did the trainer say to you about why they weren't doing anything outside? And how did they explain that sitting on this place board was going to fix his aggression?
Outdoors, yeah.
Well, at all, anything, you know what I mean? It's just like sitting on this place board. They're never doing it outside.
Yeah.
So they sort of went, well, they didn't really tell me anything. So I went, okay. I said, so would you like to just think for a second and tell me how you think getting your dog to sit on the place board is dealing with your dog's... They called it aggression, but I mean, obviously I never saw the dog, so I don't know. That's going to deal with your dog's aggression outside. And they thought for a few seconds and they went, don't know. I said, your trainers were rubbish. And it just was, there's been several things like that that sort of pop into your conversation. You think, God, we were talking about that.
Yeah.
And people's belief that they've got such a good trainer, but then they're not doing an awful lot to really help the dog. So a bit of a sad situation, but it was a really weird one, that. Really
Yeah,
weird.
and probably easily could have happened to Gilly, really.
Oh.
If the owners of Gilly didn't have a breeder like yourself that says, bring him back, etc. Because actually, where do people go if they have a breeder that they take a dog home and then the dog develops such issues and then essentially you're maybe... how old was the dog that got put to sleep? Did you...
It was about 3-4 years old, I think.
Wow. Yeah, it's quite young, isn't it?
Yeah, it's no age. I mean, they said they took the puppy home and within 12 months it started to show these signs of aggression.
Okay.
But it's no age. But this is the problem, that I don't know whether the dog could have been fixed, but ultimately what they were doing isn't going to fix it.
Yeah.
And I know exactly what they're doing. They're basically trying to put a behaviour, so your dog's lunging on the end of the leash, barking and screaming at other dogs. So what they do is they get it to sit on a place board and it can't lunge and scream. It's got a behaviour that it's doing, so it can't do the other one. That's the theory behind it. But you're not handling the reason why the dog's wanting to scream and shout and bark at other people and other dogs.
Yeah.
So you're not handling the core mindset. You're not changing the dog's mindset. It's still going to be either aggressive or fearful, even if you can get it to sit there. But sitting there for a piece of food is nowhere near as rewarding if the dog is aggressive, because it's going to be self-rewarding for that barking and screaming and scaring the living daylights of the other dogs.
Yeah.
Or it's just not going to happen. So it just felt quite sad for them, really, because obviously they sort of had got this dog and it had been put to sleep because they hadn't had a good decision-making process around the trains. But they were adamant, they were brilliant. Excuse me. Adamant they were brilliant. They jumped down my throat when I said, well, no.
And you would think that having gone through an ordeal of losing your dog, that then you would start to, I suppose, have a very different appraisal of how good that trainer was if you didn't see any let up in the behaviours that led you to have to make that awful, awful decision.
Well, that's the first thing. You would expect to see some development, some improvement.
Yeah, aggression.
And, when you don't, then you have got to question, why is this not working? Why, because most problems, you might not be able to solve them 100%. Some of the problems are quite severe, but you can reduce them. You can mitigate a lot of those circumstances, and you can allow the dog to have a less of a reactive situation or a less of a fearful encounter or whatever it is, but you can improve it. And, it may not be, and again, I think this is something that people sort of struggle with. They sort of get a trainer in and they want to get it fixed like dead quick.
Of course, yeah.
The amount of people that come to me and say, I've got a problem and I want to fix it is huge. The amount of people who come to me and say, I think I'm doing a few things wrong. Can you just show me how to, mark and reward, or how I can, improve my negative reinforcement skills or whatever, is minuscule. Is absolutely tiny. People don't come and say, can I get better? Can you show me how to be a better owner of my dog, to be able to train them better? It's all, they've got a problem. They only deal with a trainer is when they've got a problem and they want it fixed.
Yeah, and I think it's so difficult, isn't it? Because the time that it's taken, I suppose, to reinforce negative behaviours, it's almost double the time to then fix the issue, and nothing is a quick fix, is it, in the dog world?
Nothing's a quick fix.
But sometimes I just think now, I mean, obviously I'm on my second dog now.
Yes, you've got Marlow now.
But I think we wouldn't, to put it quite simply, maybe for people listening to this podcast, would we, I don't know, as somebody coming from a kind of an exercise background, would we continue to pay a personal trainer for 12 months if we didn't see any improvements in our physical health? So I suppose we need to start. It's hard to understand what qualifications obviously mean that somebody is a certified good behaviourist. And I think you've said previously, you know, you want to be looking at somebody who maybe has, you know, case study examples of how they fixed similar behaviours, you know, and things like that to go off. And I think it's really difficult, I suppose, as dog owners to quantify what makes a good behaviourist. But actually, if we're not seeing train. There we go. First thing.
Last time was the same thing.
Same thing. But I think if you're continuing to work with somebody in that field and not seeing any improvement for you or your dog, then surely there's got to be a different.
Well, the thing is, I think part of the problem is that you don't need. There's no specific qualification.
Yes.
You can call yourself a behaviourist or a dog trainer without ever laying your hands on a single dog.
Yeah.
You know, and. You can't do that if you're going to be an accountant or a solicitor.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? You've got to train. You've got to put the time in. So I do think it's a very weird thing, and there's a lot of people out there with very closed minds about, you know, how to train dogs and what's right and what's wrong, and there's an awful lot of factors at play when people are picking their dog. Not just the fact that we're in a stressful time. It's got to the point now where our dog is really bad and we need to fix it.
Yeah, because we tend to only instruct people like that when we're at that stage, don't we?
Yeah.
Because I suppose we don't feel as dog owners that we necessarily need to spend that money or have an external source come in and support us, but we do when it gets to a point where we think we can no longer manage this, whether it's on a walk or in the home. Or
the big thing I get a lot of people, I thought I could fix it, I thought I could manage it, I thought I could control it, it's only a dog.
yes,
And
way more complex than.
It's just that I think the way human brains and the way dogs' brains work are different.
Yes.
And we don't connect. They don't connect with us. We don't connect with them because we just don't see it. And, you know, the little thing, I mean, you see it on the internet. These people are going on about their dog and it's just torn up a load of toilet rolls. And they say, "Is that you?" And the dog sort of looks sheepish and cowers. And, "Oh, look, the dog knows it's done wrong." The dog doesn't know it's done wrong. It was an hour ago. Yeah. Well, what it does is it reads your facial expression.
And it can see the disappointment. Yeah.
Exactly. It listens to your tone and it has all, "Oh my God, I've done something wrong. Please don't shout at me." And the dog then cowers and goes into submissive behaviour. And it doesn't understand what's happened because it doesn't understand that was an hour ago and that's what they're being shouted at for.
Yeah, it's not a direct consequence for tearing up the tissue or the toilet, pulling the toilet roll off, is it? It's just a consequence of trying to read a human at a time where you can't really
They don't make
have a consequence for that.
They don't make an association. I'm being shouted at because that's been all. Yeah.
Even if we point at it and say no.
And there's all these different things that are very, very different. So it is very difficult for people picking trainers, I'm sure. But yeah, it's a very odd thing. Very, very odd thing.
Yeah, and I suppose a helpful thing for any, I suppose, either new or older dog owners listening to this is, I suppose, you're looking for meaningful change, aren't you? If you're going to get somebody in to help you.
You need to see quick, not complete change, but you need to see very quickly that the things that you're doing are making some little bits of change, little bits of improvement, so you can see you're going in the right path.
Yeah.
You know, you're not going to have a dog that's lunging on the end of its leash and barking and screaming at people being fixed in, you know, a few hours. But what you'll be able to do over a period of a week or so, if you're practicing the basics of what the trainer's telling you to start with, you should be able to see some differences. You should be able to see some improvement little by little. And things will go backwards because I have a lady in Australia who messaged me and asked me if I could help with her dog, which I found really weird. Someone around the other side of the world messaging me saying, "Can you talk to me? Can you help me with my dog?" Yeah. and she's done wonders with the dog. The dog was very reactive, would bark at strangers, would bark when on the walk, and it was going really well. And then she rang me, and we did it's sort of quite difficult trying to get the time differences right.
Absolutely.
So she rang me on WhatsApp and said, I'm feeling really down because this is happening and that's happening. And in talking to her, she said, I get very anxious. I said, there you go. That's your point. There's where your problems come in.
Yeah.
And because we had that ongoing conversation, I said, stop being stressed. You know, you're getting down because you're not making progress all the way, and you're going out on a walk and you'll still be. And she stopped it. And she messaged me the other day and said, dog's brilliant, we're doing brilliantly. I said, right, fabulous. And it's just little things like that that you change that make a difference, and you then can see yourself going forward again. And that's the thing, it's little steps all the way forward, but you want to see that little bit of a change. You're not going to a six-pack overnight, but you want to be able to see that your waistline's getting smaller. And if it's not, well, I'm with the wrong personal trainer.
Yeah, and it's the same thing. I think it's not about us having always to, you know, do the research that says, okay, what puts that trainer better than that one? But actually, there's small things that we can do if we're going to work with somebody that says, okay, I can start to see, you know, meaningful change, or I can start to kind of connect with my dog a little bit more, and it's responding to what I'm asking. And there are things that we can look for. Really with a view that you're not going to end up in a position where you've really put your trust, time, money into somebody, and still you've ended up like that, you know, those poor people with your dog still not here at the end of it.
Correct. And the difficulty is that unfortunately there are ideologies in training. There are people who are what you call force-free, who don't believe that you should say no to your dog or correct your dog. Yeah. And, you know, it's a very difficult one because nobody likes to tell a dog off or correct the dog. There's a consequence for doing wrong. But the dog needs to know. And it's a very, very big subject. But you have people who have ideologies who won't use corrections, who won't use certain tools. And that's fine, that's not a problem. But the problem I have is that those people are then saying that we can fix all these problems. We can stop your dog chasing, you know, bicycles and chasing cars just with a treat and a kind word. It's never going to happen. No. Because those behaviours of the dog chasing the bicycle is way more rewarding. It's self-rewarding to the dog than it is for a piece of food. So there are a number of different things. And then there's a lot of misunderstanding that people go, oh, well, it's negative reinforcement. That's just an aversive and it's punishment. No, it's not. People don't understand. Yes. So there's, you know, there is. I mean, I could talk all night on negative reinforcement and how people misunderstand it. And then they go, well, that's punishment. Well, no, it's not punishment. And so you've got all these bits of misinformation. So it is very difficult because you're talking to some people who think they know what they're talking about as trainers, but actually don't.
Yeah, maybe the main message is we need to be a little bit more open to the approaches that people can show work as well, because essentially we all want to kind of live harmoniously, don't we, with a pet in our home.
Of course you do, but you don't tell your dog off because you like telling your dog off. No. You tell your dog off, well, I say tell your dog, you correct your dog for a behaviour. Yeah. There is a consequence for it, and that's not necessarily physical punishment. It can be just a word, it can just be a look. Yeah. You know, and those types of things you need to guide your dog so that your dog knows the difference between right and wrong. Because if your dog, a prime example, if I sent you into a room and said, right, there's a job you've got to do in this room, but you didn't really know what you were supposed to do in that room, you'd be stressed. And if you're, same thing, if you've got a dog in your life, in your household, and it doesn't know what its boundaries and limitations are, what it can and can't do, there's stress. Yeah. And therefore that dog is living in a constant state of stress.
Yeah, just clear communication, isn't it, between you and your dog, which you build over time. Yeah.
And with that communication, you don't need to, you know, when you say punishment can be a, really? You know, or what? And the dog goes, oh, crikey. Because they know that that's not what you're wanting to see. So you build that relationship, and your consequences can be something as simple as just a word or a look, and the dog knows it's, oh, no, okay, I won't do that anymore.
Yeah, and as time progresses, you're hoping that you're spending more time in positive reinforcement, aren't you, in terms of your marking and rewarding everything that you want to see?
Yeah, I mean, to get into the subject of negative reinforcement is basically, when you look at the science of it, and it's basically positive reinforcement. The brain acts in the same way when you are, because negative reinforcement is escape and avoidance learning. So the dog in this case wins, because I teach negative reinforcement as a game. So the dog, when it doesn't get the correction, wins. So you teach the dog so the dog understands the structure of what the game is. And then when it achieves what you want it to do, it's won, it's not lost. And when you map the brain activity on a dog that's getting a treat, positive reinforcement, and you map the dog's brain activity when it's avoiding that correction, it's the same. Very, very similar. There's a rush of dopamine. So the dog is actually realising it's a win. And there's so much more to that. But anyway, so it's quite a big subject, that.
It is. One will definitely pick up.
How's it gone with Marlow over the last few weeks?
I feel like everything that you've just spoke about, you can see happening in real time when you have an 11, 12, 13-week-old puppy who moves into your home. Because, of course, you're trying to learn the language that you're both trying to get on the same page of, and the communication is huge in getting that right, isn't it?
Yeah.
The last few weeks.
What's it been like? Or should I say, how is it? Because obviously you had preconceived ideas before because of Kobe.
Yeah.
So Marlow comes into your house.
Yeah.
What was your expectation and what's the reality of it?
So I think when you've lived a year without a dog, the expectation is all excitement, I suppose. You're eager to have that bond with a dog in your life again, which immediately is fulfilled in that moment when you've got a dog that walks through your front door and you go, we're here again, aren't we? We're going to build this and this is going to be magical. And then reality sets in. But that is surely natural. And I think something that I'm really keen to talk about today, which may, I feel just affects me, but it will affect a lot of people who have been in a similar situation, and maybe the people that you've just spoke about if they ever go to get another dog, whether that's you've had a dog put to sleep for a medical reason, or you've had a dog put to sleep for behavioural issues, or any reason why you've lost a dog other than to healthy old age. I think I never anticipated, I think we spoke on the last podcast about the effects of having a dog in terms of getting another one when you'd been through such an ordeal. So you put that to your back of your mind and you say, no, I'm going to do this again. And you get to the point where you're totally comfortable with that as an idea. And then you have a dog come in again that you're living with. And immediately it's excitement, you're feeling optimistic, you're positive, and you've got something in your life which you just instantly love, which can't be comparable to many things. You kind of have this thing that's so tiny, so small. It's a puppy. But actually, the realities of having a sick dog before, you don't really realise, and I never could have foreseen this coming, about the potential effects it would have when you got another dog. So obviously we haven't spoke about this.
No.
So Marlow comes home and he is brilliant. He's a ray of sunshine, and he's actually just what our house has been lacking for 12 months because we haven't had a dog in it. So it was so many of the reasons why we wanted to get another dog. They just bring you joy, happiness that you can't get almost from anywhere else. No. And I read a quote and it said, money can't buy you happiness, but it can buy you a dog. And that is about as close to happiness as you're going to get. Which I absolutely love.
That's a good one. I like that.
That is so good. But about 3 or 4 days in, you don't see yourself doing it as a dog owner. I actually can't believe I was thinking this. You're like waiting for something to go wrong.
Okay.
But this is so new for me. Obviously, this is the first time I will ever be a second-time dog owner. And my first dog that I ever had was pretty ill from pretty early on. Yeah. Now, when I look back on it. So you're all in the joys and you're optimistic and you've got this bundle of joy in your life. And then very quickly you go into a mindset of, it's almost like too good to be true, which is so weird. And I'm hoping that somebody will listen to this and resonate, maybe even if it's only one person. Because you're thinking, at what point did things start to go wrong with Kobe? Like, he seems fine, he seems healthy, he seems happy, he's content. moving forward, and we can see positive change every day. I can see he's settling in because we're very new to him, and he's, you know, very new to us, and we're doing things that we're kind of communicating. But I just can't explain. I was just thinking, like, this is my responsibility now to look after him for however many years. And I'm thinking, the reality really hits you of, I've now got this responsibility again. And I think when you've owned a dog who was poorly before, you think to yourself, what, again, it went back to that very early question that I said to you, what if it happens again? And the way it kind of manifested was, he couldn't really, the first 3 days, he was such an independent boy. He was taking himself off to the kitchen. It's been hot weather. He's been very independent, and he's been fantastic. And then you find yourself like watching everything he does, not because he's doing anything he shouldn't be doing, but just because I'm thinking, I don't want anything to happen to you. And it's so funny.
The difficulty, or the potential difficulty, is then you end up wrapping them in cotton wool.
Yeah.
And you don't expose them to stuff.
Yeah. So after a couple of days, I was thinking, it's quite nice that we're in this bubble. But the nice thing was, I would say I'm very, I hope, self-aware. And almost I spotted the behaviour straight away. I thought, I'm doing this thing of, I thought leaving 12 months between owning one dog and getting another, there was no possible way that any kind of behavioural association from me could be transferred one bit. And it is. You like almost pick straight up where you left off. And it's a madness really, because you just think, I've gone from watching one dog's every move, mainly because certain behaviours would trigger certain responses, and obviously I would know that some things were too much for him, some things were not enough. And then you get another dog and you think, well, there's no similarities here whatsoever, no similarities, you know, you would expect in breed, temperament, kind of age, medical condition. And then you find yourself watching everything they do thinking, is he going to be okay? Is he going to navigate that? Is he getting up that step too many times? Is he doing it? And it's funny. And within about 24 hours, I was like, this has actually got to stop, and you've got to enjoy this for what it is. And the minute I was like, I've noticed I'm doing that as a byproduct of, it's human behaviour. It's what we probably do. We're caring, again, too much in the same capacity. Not too much maybe, but we're caring in the same way, or we think we're caring. But I was thinking, he's really independent. He's happy to take himself off to the kitchen and lie down because it's all, he needs a lot of sleep. He's a puppy. Was doing that for the first few days, and then after 4 or 5 days I'm thinking, why am I why am I following him to the kitchen for? He's asleep, I can see him there, or we've got a camera on him there, he's fine in his bed. And I thought, do you know what I'm actually going to do if I don't stop doing this? I'm going to make him not go anywhere without me, not feel confident to go anywhere without me, think that everything he possibly navigates on his own is terrifying, because I will be sending off some sort of message that everything he navigates is just a terrifying world out there.
Correct. That's what they do. They spot body language. Yeah. So they got, first of all, their first communication method is body language. Yeah. So they're spotting all your stress indicators that you're giving off. Yeah. Second thing is that their hearing is phenomenal. So they're going to be able to hear your heart change its rate and your breathing change its rate because you're stressed over it. Then they've got their ability to smell. Well, they've actually done a test, and I can't remember the details of it, but they collected sweat of people who were frightened and scared, put it into a container, put it into a room, and the dogs went into this room and were visibly spooked by it because they could smell the fear in the sweat. Yeah. So you're giving off sweat particles in the dogs for not, so
skin response. Yeah. And I just thought, after all the conversations that we'd had and the things that obviously now I'm starting to read and really enjoy doing in my spare time, I'm thinking you're going to end up becoming one of those people that often you don't need to train the dog, you need to train the owner. Because actually you're putting the fears and consequences of a past experience, but we probably do that with all things, with relationships, with, like we say, if we went somewhere and it was just negative every single time we went, we would expect that. So the expectation is that it's going to be the same. In actual fact, it's completely different.
Yes.
And I just can't, I can't quite get over how lucky I feel to have him in my life. And actually, he is so unaware, but he is so different to anything, obviously, I've experienced. I've never had a Cocker Spaniel before. And actually, I think he's the one that's like, this is actually just totally fine, you know? And obviously, I'm thankful to you for that, because actually, I'm sure from all the things that I have read, due to his socialisation and him being the age that he is, he's actually pleasantly like, I'm going to show you that this is okay. And that has been actually so incredibly healing for me.
Good, good.
Which has been incredible. And that was probably the first week, and you read things online about puppy blues, and the reality then comes back, because you have a responsibility to something that you didn't for 12 months then. So your lifestyle and your routine changes massively. So I suppose there's that overthinking of what, you know, there's that readjustment of our lives, because our lives have changed massively. And I could only imagine it would be the same as having a child, surely, that then one day, you know, you may be pregnant, the next day it's here. And then you've got the responsibility to care for that, because it can't care for itself. So I can only imagine that the response feels exactly the same. But once you settle into it, I mean, it probably took me about a week of going through these emotions. And it's funny, you can live in a house as a family and all be very different, taking on that level of commitment. You know, you can either take to it to a duck to water, or you can go, actually, I'm going to kind of worry about it. And I was like, this has to stop. And since I've noticed that behaviour and just started enjoying it, it's been,
You miss all the lovely little things because you're stressing about them, rather than going, wow, isn't that great? He's just done this, or look at that, oh, he's just done this. And you do. I always say it's if you're focusing on the puppy and you're stressing about getting it right, which is a different thing. But if you're constantly focusing on making sure you never make a mistake, I said you'll miss all. There's so much beauty in that for that relationship that you're missing because you're stressing about getting it right. And I always say to everybody, you will get it wrong. You will not get everything right.
There's no way.
No, there's no way.
Even if you've trained 100 dogs. You might, but
no, I still make mistakes. You do things, and you know, because not everything works the same way with every dog. Yeah. So you'll do something with a dog that you think, that should work, and it doesn't. So you then recorrect and try to do it a different way. So no matter how much experience you have with dogs, you will always find something challenging.
And I think you become. So obviously only had 2 dogs, and obviously we're very early on with Marlow, and he's 13 weeks old now, and he's incredible. But there's things that he does that, of course, it's all trainable, but there are things that he does already that are just him, if that makes sense.
What sort of things?
So just his personality, but things that I found so much easier. So of course, you've got to work hard on the training, but there's things about him that are very calm in certain moments that I think, I would like to think it's all because of us, but I think that there are things about him that he just, for example, you can teach them a settle command, but he's very good at knowing when he's had enough, which actually, you might correct me, but I didn't expect that from a puppy at 13 weeks old.
There's a lot of factors at play. Part of it is the environment that he is now in.
Okay.
Part of it is the environment he's come from.
Yeah.
And you've got to take some credit for that for yourself, because, well, just think about it. When you came to visit him, it was a nightmare.
He was.
And I said to you a number of things. I said he will be a harder dog to train than one of his brothers or sisters, because he was full on from the. And you then still went ahead and went for him. So what you've done since you've got him home is you've created a calm environment for him. Yeah. And that calm environment is it's rubbing off on him. Yeah. So you've got to take some credit.
Yep.
We put the foundations in. Yep. And, if you then take puppy home, or anybody takes the puppy home, and they don't really care about how they build the rest of it, then it's going to fall down. There's going to be problems with it. Yeah. So it's very much a case of putting those simple things into place, and all you've got to look at is, the puppy has something in his mouth that you don't want in the mouth. And very quickly, if you approach that wrong, it becomes a game. And you're chasing the dog around the house, around the garden, and he's got a sock in his mouth or a trainer or whatever.
Yeah.
Very quickly, you get bad or unwanted behaviours because you've handled it wrong.
Yeah.
And on the reverse of that, you also get great behaviour if you just handle it right. So you should give yourself credit. You've probably done some brilliant stuff that you probably don't even know you've done, but that being calm.
I think having a terrier as a dog before, being a first-time dog owner, is very different. And I think I probably equipped, through various conversations with yourself and trying to... And I think you always want to do better next time, so you do put an added layer of pressure on. But actually, I think I probably got my last dog to 6. And did he settle at night on a place board or in a bed or... No. But Marlow just goes, okay, this is what we want now. We want to just...
You've got to look at Kobe, had a lot of health issues, a lot of pain.
That probably
prevented him from actually wanting to settle.
I think he was just always either I want to be on my own or I'm roaming around because I can't quite get comfy to settle. So we haven't got that now. And maybe that's exactly what we're seeing. But yeah, he's just... I think I went home with the idea that we'd picked a puppy that was going to be super difficult, and we were obviously used to super difficult because of the circumstances in which we found ourselves. And actually, he surpassed all expectation because he is settling. So the first 4 nights, obviously, and I said to you, we did all the crate games when we got him home, and then the first night was hell. Hell. Just cried on and off all night. Obviously, different environment, maybe not enough, time in the day, maybe not in the crate, but we were working on building this positive association. The next night it got easier and easier and easier. And probably since night 4, so obviously we're 2.5 weeks, nearly 3, are we 3 weeks, nearly 3 weeks in now, from the 4th night, which obviously I never thought would come in the first night. He went into his crate at 10:30 and now he sleeps till 6:30. But just not even a sound. No, nothing. Just goes in, sleeps. We're in a routine, sleeps.
Because you've built, that's the behaviour that we want to see.
But he sits there at 6:30 in the morning like, I'm awake now. But silence. I just find it astounding. I just find it astounding that he's 13 weeks and he knows that. So we're in a routine now. He knows, all right, okay, this is bedtime. This is what we do. The routine's the same every day. Even on the weekends, it's the same.
This is the thing. That's the thing. They love this routine.
Yeah.
So he understands this means this and that means that.
And nothing bad happens when we go with this routine.
And there is no confusion.
Yeah.
So there's no stress. There's no anxiety from the dog because he doesn't know what's going to happen next. What should I be doing? I know what I'm supposed to be doing. I'm supposed to be doing this.
Yeah.
And I know what happens next because I've done it every single day. And the dog has that routine and the dog is calm and relaxed.
I mean, to be honest, where we're actually at, considering we're 2.5 weeks in, we've gone from 4 nights of, first night really crying, a couple of nights crying when we put him into his crate and sleeping through, to, okay, we go in now, we're silent and we sleep through till the morning, and even when we wake up in the morning we're quiet, but we obviously hope someone comes to us because we need to the toilet, etc. We've actually get to 10:30 now, and this is only 2.5 weeks in, and he's like, come on now. Almost like taking himself off to his crate. And don't get me wrong, he's not at the point when we're 2.5 weeks in. He doesn't take himself off to his crate and goes, this is 10:30 now, and now this is where I'm staying. He goes to his crate, he sits in it, he waits for someone to say, yes, you are doing a good job. And if not, he'll pop his head around the living room door and be like, if he if he could be human and go, you've told me this is where my bedtime is. I think he'd go, come on guys, what are we doing here?
Fabulous, you've done a brilliant job by the sounds of it.
So I feel like the dog that I took home on day 1, who was a dream all day, but then obviously cried a little bit at night, which, maybe to be expected. Some dogs will, some dogs won't. I thought we'd have that forever. And then within 4 days, we're like, no, this is, keeping up with the crate games and keeping up with the...
I said to you, you do the crate games, you do your marker word training so you can mark all those positive behaviours and reward them. And your crate games and your toilet routines. very quickly the dog drops into it, and you don't have. I mean, the amount of people that come here and say, "Oh, my friends told me we're going to have weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks of screaming." I said, "No, you won't. Do what I'm telling you to do, and you'll end up doing it." You know, his sister, first night, boom, not a sound.
Yeah.
And a couple of others in the litter were not a sound the first night.
Yeah.
But 3 or 4 days. I mean, you know, he didn't. It's like one night of crying and then bits and bits so it's like one night and then other night he's getting it now.
Yeah.
So and that part of that is because he's older. You know, he was 11 weeks when he left.
Yeah.
So you know, you're taking the difference between 8 and 11 weeks. There's 3 weeks.
Yeah.
That's a huge amount of time in the dog's lifespan.
Yeah.
It's learned so many more things. It's become so much more independent. So much more developed from all the things it's done. It's just, it's a world apart.
It is.
So you're taking a different dog home and the dog manages itself in a different way.
And it's funny because we probably don't give ourselves enough credit, and we are putting in the hard work, and we are, we're really persistent with it, as we would now expect to be for at least 12, 18 months of getting getting your dog to an adult dog that you want to see in and around your home. But it's been funny, we've been walking around the village where we live, and we came across a Labradoodle puppy, an adult dog to Marlow, really. He looked super tiny on his lead, and she was huge. I couldn't actually believe she was a puppy. And the owner said, we said, "Oh, how old is she?" And 16 weeks. And they said, "We've had her from 8 weeks." And they said, "Just this week, we've finally getting her to sleep through the night." And I honestly looked at them and I said, I don't know if it is us or if it's picking him up, from you and such a good socialiser.
It'll be a combination of things.
And a combination of all things. But what I actually said was, I actually don't think I could have done night 1 for, if we picked him up at 11 weeks, 5 continuous weeks. And that's 5. And they've had 8 weeks of that. And I actually really felt sorry for them, because I thought how exhausted I felt after night 1 if I had 8 full weeks of that.
Yeah. But
yeah.
What
endless possibilities.
Well, what boggles my mind there is that they have had 8 weeks.
Yeah.
And not once did they, when you were talking to them, they didn't say, and we spoke to the breeder, and the breeder told us to do this, this, and this. Yeah. They've had no support from day dot.
Yeah. And bless them, they said, "You can conquer anything in the day, can't you, if they're sleeping through the night?" And I said, absolutely. And I am so glad she is sleeping through the night now, because I said to them, we've had him for 2.5 weeks and we wouldn't have conquered what we have in the day if we didn't sleep at night for 2.5 weeks. So 8 weeks is crazy to think about it. But you can see, can't you, how things kind of escalate. But it has been amazing, and we've met a lot of people on walks. No kind of meets on walks, as in he's not come nose to nose with dogs on walks on a lead.
Consciously keeping him neutral to other dogs.
Yeah. So we're either standing and having a conversation like we did then with a dog, and he is, we're asking them to respect the space, and we're trying to give him obviously commands to sit or lie down beside us whilst we have a conversation. Difficult with a 16-week-old puppy that's flipping on a lead is all I can say she was doing. She was just like flipping on a lead.
And what was Marlow doing?
Just sat there. Yeah, he just sat there. It's funny, and I think I've said to you, and I said to you just briefly before we started this, I'm under some illusion he isn't like a dog's dog because it's like he almost doesn't notice them. And I think that's what we've tried to do. I don't want other people's dogs that I don't know coming up to him on a lead. I can't possibly control that, how then that experience goes. So now, because we've been doing that for 2.5 weeks, he doesn't associate us going on a walk if a dog is passing us in an opposite direction with we greet that dog. That just doesn't exist in his world, clearly.
Well, the thing is, he doesn't need to sniff them. He can smell them. His nose is good enough to smell them at the distance that they are. Yeah. So he knows what it is. He knows what's been going on.
Yep.
And it's just a fallacy that these dogs need to meet. Socialisation. Socialise your dog with my dog.
Yeah, and we have had a couple of questions, and it's been really interesting. It's been quite insightful, because when I've said, we're not meeting dogs on leads, we're doing training. And people have said, so I take it he's not vaccinated then? And I've said, he couldn't possibly walk on this footpath if he wasn't vaccinated. He's 100% vaccinated and he's 11, 12, 13 weeks old and he's old enough to walk. We're just not engaged. We're not doing this. Yeah. This isn't what we're doing. And it's funny because we all buy into different things. And I actually, personally, for me, I don't want my dog meeting other dogs on leads that I don't know. I've previously had a dog that I would say to people, you don't want your dog or your puppy meeting my dog. I cannot predict with the pain that he's in and stuff like that, I can't possibly predict how he will react. No. So I certainly wouldn't inflict that on you. So now I'm on the reverse of that I don't know possibly what that dog might be experiencing and how that might, see Marlow.
Don't you think that comment of he's not vaccinated, there's
got to be a reason of why you don't want your dog to meet my dog.
Well, but it's the misunderstanding that your dog, it picks up viruses from being near another dog. It's got nothing to do with it being near another dog. Yeah. They pick them up off the ground. Yeah. So these people who are getting these puppies and doing research, they're not getting the right research because that's not how it happens.
I mean, we have had people, it's been lovely because we have had people come over to us and, shout over, should I say, and say, can we bring our dog to say hello? Which has been really nice that somebody's gone, I can see that's a really tiny dog there. Yes. And maybe that owner wants us to come over and then it's given us such an adequate space to go, thank you, but no, thank you. And we've just continued moving on past. The amount of people that put their dog in your dog's way, almost on purpose. We've had it. We were kind of just walking on the pavement, and you will see the kind of movement of I'm just walking my dog, maybe to heel, or that person would be, and they do that as if to say there's another dog coming, so this must be, this must be expected. So that and there's been some really, really big dogs that they've gone, and I almost just step in front of Marlow but continue the walk and say, we're in training at the moment, we're not meeting other dogs on the lead. And that'll obviously change when he's bigger. We'll still be in training, but we'll just go, we don't meet other dogs on a lead that we don't know. But it's funny because people take real offence to that. And you'll get the comment of, but my dog's friendly or my dog. And I'm like, that very, very, that's fine for you.
Yeah, the fact that your dog is or isn't friendly is irrelevant.
Yeah, and I think you have to really be polite and reason with people and say, I'm not making this decision because I think your dog isn't friendly.
Yeah, but all you've got to do is look at this Labradoodle that you saw. Yeah. It was doing backflips trying to get to Marlow because since it was however old, they've been walking the dog and it's been meeting these dogs. Yeah. It's now become a learned behaviour. Every time we see a dog, I go bonkers. I'm allowed to do this stupid stuff. So when it's not allowed to do it, the dog does not have any impulse control. Yeah. It's just going bonkers. Let me do it. So you have real problems with walking a dog on a lead because every time your dog sees another dog, its expectation is, I'm allowed to go and say hello and run around like a twit. Yeah. And you just create bad behaviour in your dog because you think that socialisation is actually letting your dog meet a complete stranger's dog in an environment where your dog has no ability to run away. Yeah. And therefore there is stress and anxiety there. If your dog's feeling nervous...
Yeah, if it picks up on something that you possibly can't or that owner says it's friendly, we can't possibly know as humans the connection between the two dogs. And it's funny, it's clearly come from somewhere. And I wanted to bring something up and an idea for, I suppose, us to discuss a bit more at length on this podcast. So we were walking Marlow and somebody stopped us, and we don't mind, people stopping, and we say, it's really great training opportunity. I'm like, well, just give me a second just to allow him to, we can stop and speak to people. It's not, can I stroke your dog, can I stroke your dog, can I stroke your dog all the time. It's you can have a conversation with me.
You're teaching him impulse control. Yeah. When we stop, I talk, you sit down. Yeah. or you lie down or whatever. You don't run around like a lunatic.
Equally the same as I wouldn't want somebody entering my home and him jumping at them. We just don't pay attention when that sort of behaviour is, you know, when he's really he's open to learning this now, because if he's never done it and he's never got reward for doing it, then hopefully we would mean that as he grows into an adult dog, we wouldn't see it.
Well, you wouldn't want your child doing it. You wouldn't be walking on the street and have your child run over to a child that you don't know and start jumping on them and pulling their hair and biting them and punching them and wrestling with them. You wouldn't allow your child to do it. So why do we think it's Exactly. So why do we think it's acceptable when we do it with the dogs?
So we had someone meet us on a walk and they said he's beautiful, and we were having a conversation and I was saying we're really using this, so thank you for stopping, but we're using this, if that's okay, as an opportunity to let him, you know, understand that we can have conversation. And she said, yeah. And we were having a really nice conversation, and within seconds what I mean about the settling is within seconds he'd lay down, which is my first experience of having a dog that I can stop on a walk and he will lie down if he's being paid no attention. But she caught my attention because she was talking about his colourings and I was asking more about it. And she said, you'll be okay with him because you can't have a block coloured one because you'll have cocker rage, but he'll be okay. So I thought, do you know what? This is ideal. I thought I want to unpick this some more like we unpicked in the last episode, this myth of IVDD and Cocker Spaniels. And I thought, we've got another one.
Yeah.
We've got another one of cocker rage.
It's an interesting one, that. It's a really, really interesting one. I would say it is probably, from the people I speak to, it's... Okay, that's the best way to put it. Cocker rage, how it used to be, or the name cocker rage, is not what people talk about nowadays.
Okay.
Now, I met a lady who she'd bred Cocker Spaniels all her life.
Yeah.
And I was talking through, she saw some of my dog's pedigrees and we were chatting through, and she was going through pedigrees and she was telling me stories. Oh, this dog was this. Oh, that dog there, the new pedigree there, that one, that was a Crufts champion. And she knew so much. She was phenomenal. And at one point she went, oh, that guy there, he was the guy who had cocker rage. And I went, oh.
Okay.
And she went, yeah. And she said, I can't remember the exact words she used, but she said, yes, he was the guy who was where cocker rage started. It was his line that had it. Now, cocker rage originally was a fit. And the dogs used to froth at the mouth. And that's why it was called rage, because the frothing at the mouth was like... Yeah. He then basically realised there was a problem and put his line to sleep. Just destroyed them all. Obviously, there were other dogs out there that still had it, but they weren't the main lines that had got it. Yeah. So it certainly is something that was around, but it's not in what people are talking now. Now, more recently, I've spoken to people who, and the only place I hear about it nowadays is people who are in the show world. Okay. And they say it's solid colours. Yep. It's red ones, especially the deep red ones. And I only hear show people mentioning it. Okay. Now, as I said last time, I've bred an awful lot of Cocker Spaniels, solid colours, reds, and I haven't had a single condition. Now, when I say single condition that you would call cocker rage, the problem is we don't know what it is.
Yeah, I was going to say that.
And I think there's a lot of misdiagnosis about.
Yeah, well, it's funny you say that. I mean, with all of these things, because I come from a standpoint of a research scientist and not a dog trainer or a dog specialist or pretending or alluding to the fact that I know anything about any of these subjects, which is what makes it so exciting for me, because I just don't... It's probably a nice place to be in, that when somebody poses something like that to me, some people would see that as, I can't believe I've just gone and purchased an English show Cocker Spaniel and I wouldn't know about that. So there's the first, I must have a look about what it is. Yes. Is it a thing? Which is, again, obviously what brings us to do this, because I'm so interested in things that, educating myself in things that I don't know about. And I think, but it's interesting, isn't it, that people believe, or there's a myth about something that we're not even sure what it is.
No, this is the thing. I mean, there's so, what do you call them in your, is it limitations?
Yeah.
Oh, I learned something there.
Yeah.
There are so many limitations when you look at the potential causes and what's stopping us. I mean, for example, there is a genetic component that potentially could be something to do with it, but I don't think our genetic skills, as in the genetic companies out there, are good enough. It's like epilepsy.
Yes.
Epilepsy is a genetic thing. There's an environmental thing to it as well, but there's lots of genes working together to get to that end result. And I think that's one possibility with this cocker age.
Yeah.
That it is a genetic thing. Now, again, we go back to the inbreeding coefficients, and there you have high inbreeding coefficients in certain areas.
Yeah.
You go to, somebody was talking to me about, they went to look for a Cocker Spaniel, and they went to the kennel club, and they went to the assured breeders. I can't remember who was telling me this. And they looked down the list and went, and they had, these breeders had puppies available, and they were all 25, 28, 29, 30% inbreeding coefficients.
Yeah.
So you are starting, and that's a risk factor.
It is, yeah, to see some of these conditions.
Yeah, it's almost like you're gambling. The higher that number, the bigger risk you're taking. Your dog is going to have a potential problem.
Yeah.
Certainly that it's going to die younger or whatever. So there's probably lots of genes that are making things happen that we don't fully understand. Don't fully understand yet. So I certainly think there's a in my perspective, there's a strong belief that we will in the future, like we will in epilepsy, we will find genes that will show us that epilepsy in dogs is because of this gene, this gene, and this gene.
Yeah.
But there are so many other things, I think, about people because a lot of the assessments from the vets is owner surveys. You're smiling at this. You've seen something. You've been researching.
Yes. I'm just gonna let you say all about this, and then I'm gonna go. Yeah, I'm just about to tell you how much I've read about this, same as I did the last time.
So yeah, I think that's to me is the first thing. They're doing it from owner surveys, owner information, and with the best will in the world, owners do not understand what aggression is in a dog.
Okay. So is that just the owner recalling incidents that they deem aggression to the vet?
Yes.
Okay.
So they would do that. So, they go to the vet and they say, my dog's aggressive.
Okay.
And the vet goes, what do you think? What do you mean by that? What happened? And they see something. Now you can I'll give you an example of how little humans understand or can spot it. Not understand it, how little they can spot it. There was a guy doing some research on wolves. And at one point, there was a misunderstanding. He was trying to show how wolves were so misunderstood. And he took some video of wolves fighting and put lovely, soft, sweet music behind it and played it to a bunch of people. And virtually all those people went, they're playing. He then took wolves that were playing and put dramatic, dun, 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 dun type of music behind it. And they went, they're fighting.
They're aggressive.
Yeah, exactly. So if the music sways the human belief brain so much, then we don't really understand what we're seeing when we see aggression.
No.
And then you've got things like, I have I've got several situations. I remember a friend of mine, she had her dog that attacked another dog.
Okay.
And she came to me and said, oh, this happened. And I said, well, hang on a minute. I said, you haven't watched the full picture. I said, there's another dog in this, and your dog attacked the other dog. I said, you did not see any signals from the dog because you weren't watching. I said, next time these two dogs get together, watch the signals. Watch the other dog more than you watch your dog. Yes. And she phoned me up and she went, "Oh my God, you are not going to believe what I've just seen." And the other dog, her dog attacked this other dog and basically told it off. But the dog was doing stuff and she was like, "I never even saw it until you made me look at the dog."
Yes.
So there's things like that that we miss as well. So we're going to the vets saying our dog's aggressive and they're doing this and they're doing that. And we're not really accurately portraying the situation because as owners, we don't very clearly spot and understand stuff.
Yeah. And I think that similar to the topic of obviously the last couple of episodes, I was keen to again understand where this comes from, because these things are so widespread, and I've said this in research, we work our whole kind of careers in academia to research, and we do really hyper focus on one specialism. You know, when people like myself do a PhD, what kind of quantifies for a PhD is that you're adding substantial kind of contribution to a knowledge area, but actually you are a specialist in such a niche thing, because no two PhDs are the same and you're specifically looking at kind of one avenue. So I think then what that means is when you do research yourself, we focus such a large amount of time on something called kind of dissemination and outreach and impact, and we want as many people as possible to hear about this, because, you know, we believe in the research that we do. And I think I spoke last time on the podcast about the importance of obviously peer-reviewed open access journals so that people can educate themselves with the information that's out there. But even so, when we're kind of in our niche areas, we really don't feel until much later in our research careers that we're really known for the research that we do, and that takes time to build. And there's fantastic professors that I work with who are absolutely known in our areas of research, and rightly so, and they've given a lifetime of contribution to science. But I think it's quite interesting for somebody who's a scientist to walk down the street and somebody pose something to you that is such a wide belief that potentially has come from nowhere or is not backed up by any science. So I think what it makes me do as a research scientist is go, where does this come from? And what was really nice when, well, not so nice, but I found obviously positives and negatives when I'd had a look, but what was really nice about when I looked up cocker age, because obviously this was something that I'd not heard of and not felt the need to almost purposefully mitigate for when I was picking a Cocker Spaniel, and I'm almost glad I didn't know about it, because would it have put me off? Who knows, because of the misinformation. Different to IVDD in obviously the same breed, actually there is a transitional point, I believe, on the internet at the moment about trying to dispel some of these things.
Wow.
So it was actually positive in the fact that, again, as now an owner of a Cocker Spaniel, you don't type in, you know, is IVDD a problem in Cocker Spaniel, same as is Cocker Rage a problem for my Cocker Spaniel. And it wasn't an immediate yes this time. It wasn't, yes, it is a problem. It was a million articles about we need to dispel this myth of Cocker Rage.
I don't believe it's a myth. I believe there's a problem.
Yep.
I believe there's a problem. I mean, they say it's reds. The red ones are the worst ones for it. Well, when you look at humans with red hair, they have different tolerances to opioid painkillers, for example.
Yeah.
They need less to do the same job. So there's just, because the limitations on the information we have are so many, people saying we need to dismiss it.
Yeah. We actually need to do more work.
Because there's something
there that we're not. I think what we need to do is dispel the myth that it is obviously a certain type of problem. And I think when I'd looked it up, and you kind of might have made some notes, and I might have come to it at a different angle and made some notes, but it was nice to see that if what was initially termed Cocker Rage then turned into rage syndrome, then started to move on to this idea of what you've just said. So it would be the same as being linked to epilepsy if it was humans. It's actually a neurological condition and not what we think it is as just a unprovoked early onset of aggression that just is then like a mist that comes over this breed.
Yeah.
It's, and like you've just gave a perfect example of, it's come from somewhere and there has been clear episodes of it. But when we Google it as Cocker Spaniel owners, we don't think it's a seizure type behaviour or, frothing at the mouth. We think it's aggression.
That's what it's become now. I don't think the frothing at the mouth is prevalent. I don't hear people talking about that now.
Yeah.
And I think because he destroyed his line, that would have then put an end to it. And there's probably still dogs out there with it, but that was many generations ago. But I do think that there are so many things that can impact on it. I mean, for example, we just talked before about the dog being stressed because it didn't know what it was actually supposed to be doing in that environment. So you can imagine a dog that they call it idiosyncratic aggression. I think that's the correct way to put it. Basically, that is a dog attacking from asleep or from rest.
Yeah.
Have you got it written down there?
Yeah.
Did I actually say the right words?
Yes.
And that, if you can imagine you're a dog,
Yeah.
and you have for multiple generations, you have been before you were ever domestic in the house and living your life in the house, and your father did, and your grandfather, so on and so forth. You were out in the wild. You were a wild dog,
Yeah.
and those thousands and thousands of years of DNA have taught you things. So if you're in a house and you're not comfortable because you do not know the difference between right and wrong, or what you should or shouldn't be doing, and you're asleep, you're going to be asleep stressed. You are never going to be able to settle and relax. Therefore, when somebody comes over to you and tries to wake you up or wakes you up by walking past, your fear and your stress and your anxiety is going to turn to fight and flight.
Yeah.
And you're going to be on it, bang, and you're going to bite somebody, or you're going to be posing an aggressive stance. And I just think that the lack of training, a dog has got behaviour that it needs to do, digging and barking. If we're not giving the dog the outlet for those things, if we're not allowing them, Cocker Spaniel's a hunting dog.
Yeah.
If we're not allowing it off lead to run through bushes, I mean, half one of my fields is left long so that the spaniels can run and hunt through the grass, and they can chase things through there, and they can run down the forest lines. That's left specifically to allow them to get those basic needs that they have. If we're not allowing the dog to have those basic needs because of we've got them in the house and we don't want them off the lead because we haven't got a good recall, then we are denying the dog the basics of what it is about. Really. And if you can imagine denying a human the basics of what it'd be about, you'd be in a bit of a bad mood. So we can't therefore blame the dog. And that again is one of the limitations, because you've got people who are coming to the vet saying, this is the problem, it's aggressive, when that person maybe not has trained the dog properly. Or
No, and you're not getting the full picture really, are you? Yeah. And I think when I'd looked it up, now owning a Cocker Spaniel myself, and he's 13 weeks old, and we're going to come up against things that he finds scary or he reacts to in a way that we wouldn't want as an owner. I came across a real world example of this, and it's going to come quite nicely back to the first thing that we spoke about when we started this episode 2. And it was actually published in the Dogs Today magazine, which, who knew, but it's a leading UK dog magazine that obviously a lot of people subscribe to and buy.
Never heard of it.
Never heard of it. I've never heard of it either. So it was interesting. But basically, it did take it back quite some time ago. But in July of 2023, so we're talking about kind of just coming out, I suppose, of a post-pandemic kind of stage then, which might have had some contribution to this. But it reported on a story of a 17-month-old Cocker Spaniel who was put to sleep because he had been diagnosed with cocker rage by a vet.
Okay.
So the journalist for this story I really liked, and obviously we can put the link to this kind of magazine article on the podcast, basically shared a wealth of information, which was fantastic. I like the idea that you're presenting on such a sad story, but you're enabling obviously people to go on then and read other journal articles about it, and where this kind of misconception may have come from and whether it was true and what studies say it is. But this particular story, which is so incredibly sad, was that the owners of this dog, and obviously this is what we've got from this article, so it may be true or not, but we obviously can consider that, had rang up a dog trainer and said, I have got a Cocker Spaniel who is displaying aggression. So for one reason or another, due to, I suppose, the number of people who bought dogs in lockdown, for some reason, this particular dog trainer, whether this is true, didn't get back to the owners for a couple of days, or maybe they'd sent an inquiry and it taken maybe, don't know, 2 days, a day, 24 hours, who knows? You're in your desperation, aren't you?
Of course you are.
By the time the dog trainer, and rightly so, this person isn't named and it's nothing to do with them, got back to the owners of the dog had already been put to sleep. So they obviously felt a certain type of way about this, because then they had a conversation, I think, at length with the owners of this 17-month-old Cocker Spaniel and said, okay, presumably what maybe you yourself would do, and said, tell me where you're seeing aggression in this dog. So we get to the point where the dog trainer says, your dog was showing examples of resource guarding and body handling issues. Yeah. So you couldn't handle him or groom him, and also you couldn't put things down or take things away from him. So they said to the owner, which is just an awful, awful place to be in as a dog owner, to think, oh no, have we had our dog put to sleep for a misdiagnosis of cocker rage when it was never that?
Well, answer me this. There's a girl, I'll mention her because I saw her video, one of her videos. I don't know what her name is. She's a Scottish girl, and she has I think it's called Living with Cooper, I think. She's got a Cocker Spaniel. Okay. And the one I saw I saw it a while ago, but she's talking about cocker rage. Okay. And she's on about vets misdiagnosing it. And she said resource guarding isn't cocker rage. No. This isn't. And she was absolutely on the money when she said the vets are being misdiagnosed. There's no test for it because we don't know the genetics. Yeah. If it's neurological, you need a brain scan. Yeah. So explain to me how a vet can diagnose cocker rage. Yeah. They can't, period. So she was bang on the money with that.
Yeah. So this article, and it's so funny that you've said that, and this now looks like we've had a conversation about it, but we absolutely haven't. And the thing was, this article concluded and it said, I would advise anyone whose vet has diagnosed their dog, so a Cocker Spaniel with cocker rage, to immediately change vets.
Exactly, 100%.
And urgently seek support from a qualified canine trainer. Yeah. Because unless your vet has given your dog a brain scan, and even then the research isn't conclusive enough to know exactly what we're looking for on that brain scan, but a specialist might know somewhere, we can't possibly diagnose this in this breed.
I feel quite clever that I've said that and you've done the same from that. I'm like, yes, win for Jason. 100%.
But it's so true. Yeah. So those poor owners is what I would say. We have to go ethically about all of these things to say, how do I then feel if I'm that dog owner? And I felt so deeply sad. So I'm now the owner of Marlow. He's 13 weeks old. So we get him to we go another 12 months, 15 months, and then we say, right, now he's being put to sleep because a professional that deals with animals has told me he's got a syndrome that can't possibly be fixed. It's genetic and it's neurological, and there's no fix for that. So he has to be put to sleep. And I think, but then you actually get to speak to somebody who may be knowledgeable about this, and they go, they can't possibly have diagnosed that. But that poor dog, there could have been definitely work on resource guarding. There could have been work on body handling issues.
I'll give you the reason why red Cocker Spaniels are the ones I think that are potentially been highlighted as one of the worst. It's because there's more of them.
Yeah.
Everybody wants a red.
Yeah.
Well, everybody wants a sable now. Everybody really wants the sable colours now.
Yeah.
But before that, it was everybody wanted a red.
Yeah.
You know, we had litters of red spaniels, and the phone would ring off the hook. You know, it would just be, you would be giving people numbers and say, you're number 6, you're number 8, you're number 10. I'll get back to you when I get back to you because I've got all these people in front of you.
Yeah.
And I'll talk to them, and if I reject them, you'll get, but I will let you know where we go. So there's an awful lot of red ones, and I think that's the first thing. There's an awful lot more of them. Lockdown produced a lot of people buying dogs for the wrong reasons, with a little knowledge or no knowledge of how to actually train and develop that dog and live with that dog. So it's very easy to see that those problems are just being compounded, and we assume a vet knows what they're talking about.
Yeah.
But no, it's don't get me wrong, there are brilliant vets out there. I know a bunch of them who are absolutely fantastic.
Yeah, of course.
But to actually sit there and believe that everything that comes out of a vet's mouth is gospel and 100% accurate is not. I could, did I say about the book?
No, I don't.
I'm writing a book at the moment. Yeah. But I was talking to a friend of mine, and he was saying, and I was talking to him about the things that I've heard vets say, and the things I've seen vets do. And he said, you should write a book called Your Vet Said What? Question mark, question mark, question mark. Because the stories I have got.
Yeah,
and I just go, whoa.
And like you say, this is a real world example of, you know, maybe diagnosing or misdiagnosing something. And there's always a bigger picture to be had from it, because, you know, we say about vets as well, you know, and we've said about this in studies that we've looked at, and I'll quickly cover it in a second about what actually the research is saying. And it's funny because you're right, there actually is something there about it, whether it's what we think it is. But I think, and vets do have a hard time as well, because we only go to them like we go to trainers ever when we have a problem. Yeah. And I think I'd said to you this about previous studies. When we take a specific sample of people or dogs and say we want to investigate this, or when we kind of recruit people to a study, we have to kind of find these people with this specific kind of criteria from somewhere. But what we should actually do is not actually just sample all the dogs that vets see or all the dogs that vets don't see, or, you know, and I talked about different, obviously, studies doing kind of surveys and looking at all the ones that maybe don't present to the vets. Because what we do, and a lot of what the research studies have done, when I looked a little bit more at Cocker ages, we say, well, what is prevalent in all of the dogs that this particular vet practice has seen? And actually what we're doing is we're focusing on the ones where dog owners have reached out for help, and actually that is such a small subset of dogs.
It's a skewed subset.
It's completely biased, yeah.
Because there's so many people out there who aren't having problems.
Who aren't experiencing that, but we're only sampling from the places where people go when they do have a problem. Yeah. And actually what we do as dog owners is, like you say, we give all this context about where we see aggression, even if we don't realise that that isn't aggression because we're not a dog. And then we are expecting them to give a diagnosis, and there's just such misinformation everywhere, isn't there? We're only telling what we see, they're only basing their diagnosis on what we tell them we see, and it's just so...
Well, just a prime example, steroids.
Okay.
Corticosteroids that vets will give dogs for allergies, aches and pains, arthritis, all these different minor conditions.
Yeah.
They synthetically have the cortisol chemical in them.
Yeah.
Cortisol is a chemical that reduces inflammation. Yeah. So you've got skin irritation and all these little bits and pieces that the vets will prescribe them to your dog for. Cortisol is one of the major chemicals. When I talk to people about dogs' reactions, I talk about adrenaline, cortisol, dopamine, and there's a few others that we work with. But you're saying that basically cortisol is your fear chemical.
Yeah.
So...
produced when we find ourselves in a situation of, oh, what do I do here?
Correct. But we are now using these steroids that are using cortisol, which is a fear chemical, to reduce inflammation, because those two jobs that it does, but we're giving them so freely to our dogs, these now then alter the balance. Now your cortisol needs testosterone to balance it. So your fight and flight kick in when the dog sees something, it worries it. But apart from cortisol, there's adrenaline and various other things. But you've also get testosterone that gives you your brave pill. I simplify it just to make it easier for people to understand. Yeah. But your testosterone is your brave pill. Now, if your cortisol is surging and you have got no reason for your testosterone or even your dopamine to balance it, because if you're looking at fear reactions, I would always counter condition with a clicker, so they have got a stimulus for releasing dopamine, which balances. You can't be fearful if you're happy. Yeah. Dopamine gives happiness. So what you get to the point is that you're now overbalancing a dog's system with cortisol from these steroids, and we're wondering now why the dog is becoming fearful and reactive and aggressive.
Yeah, when we think we're treating something else, but we're creating a problem somewhere else.
Your problem, and there was, and I can't really. I'm gobsmacked that it's not something that people pick up on so much easier, because, for my mind, as soon as I started reading about these massive amounts of steroids, I mean, there's a problem here. Yeah. So therefore, there's another thing that you don't know whether these dogs are going into the vets and they've got other conditions like a skin allergy or, a bit of inflammation or whatever. Yeah. And then these dogs are reacting aggressively, not because they're aggressive, not because they are untrained and stressed and anxious, but because the cortisol is flowing through the system.
Yeah, and we would absolutely have to control all of those, we call them variables, to be able to say with 99.9% certainty that this is prevalent in certain colours, sex, breed. I wanted to pick your brains a little bit still on this idea of cocker rage. So gone through and looked at some studies, as we've basically not going into it because we've basically just covered it. So again, taking a obviously subset of maybe a couple of studies out there, and we can pop the links to these on the videos about again, we're taking this subset of English Cocker Spaniels, and we're saying, okay, what percentage of each coat colour, and again, what you've said, the red ones are the highest, prevalence for aggression. This particular study was interesting because it was looking at English Cocker Spaniels in veterinary care in the UK, and it was basically trying to determine the most common disorders and overall longevity of Cocker Spaniels, for obviously owners to look at. So it was looking at a variety of things, and it was interesting because it kind of hyper-focuses on this idea of cocker rage, but actually the main kind of narrative of the article is actually, what do we see most of in this breed? And it was funny because in this particular sample of, say, 2,000 Cocker Spaniels in this kind of study, periodontal disease was the highest kind of prevalence. So we start to talk about things like periodontal disease and diarrhea and other conditions that this subset of Cocker Spaniels experienced. But then we've just got this big, in the discussion, we've got this big boom. Cocker rage is prevalent, and it's in the red ones, and it's in male Cocker Spaniels more than females, and they've done a couple of these statistical tests which I spoke about before, and yes, they are probable and they are statistically significant, which I think I'd said in the kind of last episodes. But it was interesting because out of over 2,000 Cocker Spaniels, and they'd said that 12% of all the Cocker Spaniels which were red or golden had this highest prevalence. And they were saying about cocker rage and aggression, which they term the same thing, which I think are very different, accounted for the fourth highest condition which was experienced by the breed. So in some ways it's a little bit contradictory because it's so prevalent and we should worry about it so much in basically male red Cocker Spaniels. But equally, it had exactly the same percentage of prevalence, which was 4% out of the 2,500 Spaniels that were in this study. Exactly the same as diarrhea did.
Wow.
So it was interesting. We didn't see the narrative in the paper about if you own a Cocker Spaniel, 4% of you will experience a dog that has diarrhea often. But we have this narrative through this paper that you should be wary that your dog will have cocker rage, though.
But the thing is, I would say that from what I know, this girl, this living with Cooper, she was saying there are so many that are misdiagnosed. Yes. And interestingly, in her comments, there was a bunch of people who really didn't understand what she was saying.
Yeah.
And I saw sort of, she made a couple of comments back sort of saying, I wasn't saying that. It's like, stop repeating yourself. They just don't understand what you're talking about. Yeah. But her comment was, and I stand by her 100%, it is misdiagnosed so many times. You know, resource guarding is not cocker rage. And we don't think we really know what a cocker rage is because we haven't been able...
and there definitely needs more research.
Yeah, I haven't been able to put a set of statistics to it.
Yeah. I mean, it was interesting. I wanted to run this particular study past you because I thought I'm a firm believer that there's too many variables that could account for those things. Like you said, other pre-existing medical conditions, socialisation as puppies, socialisation or lifestyle as you live with your kind of owners. And it was interesting that when we talk about limitations, they'd basically said, all of these, you know, we can say that there is some genetic component to it, but very similar again to IVDD, there is definitely things that are done along the way that are lifestyle factors that we can't possibly say aren't linked to why we experience these things. And they'd said, you know, different dogs that had been socialised differently will be fearful of different things, in which case you'll see it in different settings. And it leads us to obviously believe, is it cocker rage if it isn't this idea that it's kind of an unprovoked onset, you know, waking up from sleep or linked to a seizure, or there was just many different variations and explanations. But there was this one particular study, and I haven't really, which is quite unusual for me, come to a conclusion of what I actually really think, but what I do think is in quite interesting. So there was a particular study in 2006, and again we can share this one, about basically a sample of, and I'm keen to really get your experience of this because this is when you have access to puppies and nobody else. Yeah. So it was 51, obviously no breeder would have 51 English Cocker Spaniels at any one time, but 51 7-week-old English Cocker Spaniels puppies. And what they did in this particular study was, and I was not aware of this test, and I don't know if you will be, and probably and maybe not, they put them through the Campbell test.
Never heard of it.
Never?
No.
Interesting. So, the Campbell test is broken down and scored in 5 domains, 5 different tests. So what they're saying is the reason why they were able, and this is very ambiguous, I don't know how they've come to this conclusion, but basically what they're saying is this is living proof that cocker rage is a genetic, comes from a genetic place, because no socialisation or life, you know, external factors have been able to be in play at 7 weeks old. If you're a responsible breeder, obviously your 7-week-old puppy or litter should still be with you. So what they're saying is, okay, we can put all of these puppies out there and say we can't possibly account for all the variance in the lifestyles that they lead and what the owners subject them to, and injury, illness and all the rest of it. So what they're saying is, okay, we're going to test 51 7-week-old puppies on this test.
So they're saying at 7 weeks old they won't have been socialised.
They won't have been socialised.
Garbage.
So they're saying, so the outcome was, we are deeming it as a genetic effect as little socialisation has taken place at this point. So, I mean, that's a topic for another day, because I'm not sure who's got 7-week-old puppies that they've not started a socialisation plan yet.
I am guessing there will be a bunch of them. And I'm just, my comment of garbage was, I'm thinking about myself. Yeah. Ours go from the first day they are born, we are doing stuff with them. And as I say, by the sheer fact that ours are leaving a lot later than what's legally allowed at the 8 weeks, we're a different kettle of fish. But then, on saying that, I've not seen Cocker Spaniels of any colour, solid or not, showing any form of aggression whatsoever.
Yeah.
Now, as I say, I would have said I must have bred 50, 60 red and maybe another dozen or two of solid chocolates and solid blacks.
Yeah. So it was interesting. So the sample, just to provide some context, was 51 7-week-old English Cocker Spaniels puppies. You'll know more about what they're talking about here than me. So 28 were male, 23 female, were subjected to this Campbell test, which I'll go on to talk about. The test was always carried out by the same person. So this was a male individual who carried out this test with all puppies, and was not somebody that bred them. They didn't know the puppy before they walked into that room. So brand new stranger, which adds obviously, it takes kind of the bias of knowing the puppy's temperament, but also obviously introduces a different response, I presume, to puppies because they're not familiar to that person. Yeah. So what it says is the puppies were not weaned and came from litters that lived with their owners together. Now, I'm not sure what they exactly mean by that. I get the weaned, but if they lived with their owners together, does that just mean puppies could be born in somebody's home? Or
I'm guessing they would have been meaning that they were living in a home.
Yeah. So then it went on to say, all puppies, so those 51 puppies, came from the first litter of their mothers.
Okay.
So none of those dogs, obviously, none of those female dogs had ever had a litter before. The tests were conducted on 10 litters, and therefore, they're talking a little bit more about the matings, which I think is not for relevance. Okay, so when we break down the 5 parts of the Campbell test, so the first one is termed social attraction. So I'll just read out what this test involves. So the test leader, so this is this gentleman, obviously, that's never met these puppies before, moves away from the puppy and then attracts their attention by clapping. This assesses the puppy's initial reaction and trust towards humans.
Okay.
Test 2, ability to follow. The test leader, gentleman, walks away from the puppy, evaluating the puppy's willingness to follow. This indicates the puppy's social orientation and potential for following a leader. Now, I don't like the terminology of some of these things anyway. Constriction test. The puppy is gently placed on its back and held in that position for 30 seconds. This tests the puppy's acceptance of physical dominance and control.
Don't like that.
I don't like the words of these.
Well, that is nothing more than alpha rolling.
Social dominance. The test leader pets the puppy from head to tail for 30 seconds, observing the puppy's reaction to physical contact and assessment of social hierarchy. We're talking about humans and dogs, so this is not hierarchical for me.
Well, this comes back to I'm your master.
Yeah. And then the last one, dominance test for lifting. The test leader lifts the puppy off the ground, observing its reaction to being held and its acceptance of being lifted. So what they did in this study was they subjected all 51 puppies to those 5 tests and scored them. The higher they scored...
Well, how do you score them? What's the difference between a 1 and a 5, or was it 1 to 10? Because, you put a puppy on its back and you restrain it. It's in effect, it's an old school technique called an alpha roll, and it's very base and very crude. And it basically says to the dog, I'm the boss and I'll let you up.
And you'll be submissive.
And you'll be submissive. Now, when you're talking about putting a dog in a submissive state like that, you are initially looking at a dog that is fearful. I'm not prepared to, respond or struggle,
yeah.
Not even in an aggressive manner. I'm not prepared to respond to that because I'm frightened because this big thing I've never met before has just pinned me to the ground.
Yeah.
Whereas, therefore, then you're going to have a dog that's going out into the big wide world and gets into a situation where it's fearful, and a lot of the aggressive displays, and this is the other big thing, what is aggression?
Yeah.
They don't know the difference between wolves that are playing and fighting.
So how are we scoring these dogs based on aggression?
Because there are bad dogs. I mean, the old adage, there's no such thing as a bad dog, just bad owners, is not true. There are bad dogs. They're wired wrong. And there are a small percentage, it is only a small percentage of dogs out there who actually want to hurt other dogs and other people. But they're just not right for whatever reason. But when you have a dog, and this is where the majority of these aggressive displays, barking on the end of a leash, barking, bark at somebody, and and the dog will then back off a little bit.
Yeah.
All those things are from fear, and what the dog is doing these displays of aggression, and what happens is that either one party goes away. It's big dog syndrome. I'll bark loud and make more noise than you, and you'll think I'm bigger and scarier than I am, so you'll leave me alone.
Yeah.
So you're then looking and picking dogs on a low level that are more likely to be aggressive for a different reason. I think it's complete rubbish.
Yeah, and what I think I was mainly interested in, I'd got kind of quite of a way through this paper, and then I thought, do you know, I'm not actually sure, and I'll obviously say the outcomes and the results in a moment, but I was a little bit concerned about that the outcomes, obviously, of this paper are suggesting this link to Cocker Rage and this supporting link of Goldens, Reds and others and males, and I'll read out the outcomes in a moment. But the problem here is it wasn't a longitudinal study, so it's supporting the narrative. So the findings were, our findings suggest that English Cocker Spaniels, and accordance to dominance, the dominance, basically it must be a dominance test, this Campbell test.
Well, it will be, yeah, because that's just, yeah.
So A, dominant behaviour is greater in males than females and is already exhibited in puppies. So what they're saying is they scored highly on not doing all the things we wanted them to be, not being submissive, not following us when we wanted them to, and all of these things. The fixed factor coat colour has a significant influence on dominant behaviour with golden, well, they termed it golden black, and mixed coloured coats ranking from most to least dominant in that order. There is no interaction between sex and coat colour, so males were more likely to exhibit dominant behaviour than females, but that wasn't respective of what colour coat that they had, so that kind of contradicts what we'd said. So basically, they're doing this narrative about this idea that we see kind of aggression and Cocker Rage and dominance in this breed. But what I also found interesting was, we never have seen, obviously, because you can't possibly track these 51 puppies, but we've never seen... We're saying that these dogs are showing...
What's the end result?
What is the end result? Have they actually showed Cocker Rage? So we've got, just in terms for the listener, it's interesting just to say, these are some of the studies that are building the foundations for this idea that Cocker Rage in golden male Cocker Spaniels exists. And what it actually means is we have quite a lot of people ringing up Spaniel charities saying, we want to relinquish our dogs because we've heard about Cocker Rage, or we've had a misdiagnosis, or we've read about it online, and we don't want it to happen to us.
Which is exactly what you said about the Stacey Solomon thing and IVDD.
Yeah.
People relinquishing their dogs.
People will say, we can't possibly have this happen to us. But what we're obviously trying to do as part of this podcast is say, some of these foundational studies that are paving the way for this being a problem, if you just unpick them slightly, I'm not saying that there's not findings that are valid there, but what I am saying is there is no possible way that that translates to an adult dog, and knowing that that is going to be predisposed to that. We don't know. We know what those puppies have done at 7 weeks old with somebody who doesn't know them. I mean, there's an interesting dynamic there, isn't there? And I suppose maybe you'll have an idea on it, Jason, about the idea that if we bring a stranger into a room, so if I'd come to view a puppy with you, first day Marlow will quite happily follow me now, and we are creating this idea in the house that when we say, we're doing recall, and when I say Marlow come, and he will come, even if he's not in the same room as me, or he can't see me, or we're in a field and wherever we are. On the first time I met Marlow at probably 4, 5, 6 weeks old, he showed very little interest in me at all. He'd never met me before. So if I was scoring my puppy now in terms of dominance, not being interested, not being social, not being these things, as a stranger walking into your home and saying, if Marlow doesn't follow me now as a 7-week-old puppy, he's X, Y, and Z, I'm just a stranger.
Okay, so take it straight back to the beginning of this article, and they were saying no socialisation has happened.
Yeah.
In any home, if you pick up that puppy, as people do, hello, coo.
Yeah.
That's some form of socialisation. Mm-hmm. You are building a bond between you and that puppy. Now, no two homes are exactly the same. Yeah. So ultimately, if you have somebody who says, oh no, we haven't socialised our puppies because they don't understand what they're doing, and they're picking them up and they're stroking them and they're playing with them and they're running around the house and doing stuff, or even mum has had more freedom and mum's been allowed to wander off and the puppy's been allowed to follow, all these things are things that will impact on how the puppy is.
Yeah.
And, you know, you can, not just that, when they've eaten. You saw it with Marlow. You could come round to sit and spend some time with him and he had eaten and just wanted to sleep.
Yeah.
Or he hadn't eaten, or he was asleep. You bring him out and he'd be charging around the sofa, around your blanket like a mad thing.
Yeah.
So all those factors vary dramatically, you know, even down to the time of how long it is since the puppy last ate.
Yeah.
Also, how long is it since the puppy last pooed or peed?
Yeah.
Because I need a wee, I want to go to the loo. So it's doing this because I want to get out because I want a wee.
So they're saying at the moment, if you do it on a 7-week-old puppy, you've got significantly less variables than if you did it on an adult dog. But actually, you've just provided 7 or 8, which would influence behaviour massively then.
And there's so many different things. What's the mother like? You know, has she been attentive with the puppies?
Of course, it's first litter of every mother.
Well, that is I've had dogs who've had first litters and have had no interest in the pups.
Yeah.
I've had mothers who had first litters and have been wonderful, absolutely brilliant. That she may, you know, that the mother may not have paid them enough attention. So what are they doing? They're going off and playing with each other at 7 weeks old. If the mother is being aggressive with them because it's a first litter and she doesn't like, you know, 7 weeks to have the mother. And again, are they on solids by now? You know, they're leaving under normal.
Yeah, I think it said they hadn't been weaned, didn't it?
No, they hadn't been exactly. So they're leaving in another week to go to their homes. They should be in a transition period at week 7 because they've got to be on solids before they can go to the new home. And it takes you a good week and a half to transfer them from mum's milk onto solids. So that's all wrong.
Yeah. So it's interesting, isn't it? And I just think we live in a world where every bit of research and every kind of thing that we talk about has its place. And it's not to say this is better than others, but it's equipping people with the knowledge to say, read these things, but say, what are the limitations to what this is saying?
Yeah, open your eyes and think about it because, you know, and I think a lot of it comes from people struggling to actually understand stuff.
Course,
I mean, for example, just, you know, if you take what I said before about the steroids, so let's say your dog's got a bit of a skin allergy, okay, and it pumps its cortisol level through the roof, and it has a go at you and you, oh, what was that? And you back off. Yeah. Then the dog learns that, oh, hang on a minute, that type of response when I was feeling itchy or I had a sore leg or whatever, got that person away from me because you're constant, are you all right, puppy? Are you okay? Are you all right, dog? And the dog's like, leave me alone, I'm in pain. Yep. So the next time that the dog is in pain, we might not know it's in pain. It may have hurt itself running, it might have had something stick in its paw, and it wants to be left alone. But it's just learned, because of the influence of the steroid and the cortisol that made it aggressive, if I get aggressive, I'll be left alone. So you can have a problem that comes up purely and simply because the dog learns that's the way to get what I want. Yeah. There are so many factors that it just... Yes, I believe there's something there.
Yeah, there is, but I think we need to, I suppose, be more conscious, you know, as dog owners as well, that the experiences that our dog has may significantly shape their response to things more so than just saying it was always predisposed to it, never had a chance, it never, you know, all of the terminology that we've said before. Yeah.
The thing is, I think that you need, if you don't know how to do something, i.e. train a dog, you need to get somebody to help you. Yeah. And you need to not make the assumption, a vet isn't a trainer. No. A vet isn't a nutritionalist. You know, very different. And they try to get these, you know, you would never let me loose with a scalpel with a dog, and I'd never want to be let loose with a scalpel with a dog. But put me in a behaviour and a training environment, and I know what I'm talking about. Yeah. why do we assume that because this person's good with a scalpel, they actually know how to train a dog?
Yeah, very different set of skills, isn't it?
Exactly. So therefore, how are they able to assess that behaviour?
Yeah.
And then, it's very, very difficult because it is misdiagnosed so many times because we don't know what it is. There's no test for it. You can't DNA test because we don't know what genetics we're looking for. We don't know what the brain is doing. So we can run a brain test, brain scan, but we're not going to...
But do we know what we're looking for when we get the results of that?
Exactly.
Yeah. And it just advocates for so much more research to be done into all of these areas that we're discussing, because actually, if we do know all of these things that we've just said are currently unknowns, it only leads to a better outcome for dogs and dog owners. The same with IVDD, the same with all genetic components of things that we can hopefully plan for and, prevent and,
But then you've got the dog owner taking responsibility of doing the training, building a relationship with your dog so that your dog isn't confused, so your dog understands what is right and what is wrong. Not going with the ideology that telling my dog no and, correcting my dog when they're doing something wrong, that's wrong. It's not wrong. Dogs live very differently to humans. And if you haven't got a clear set of rules for the dog, they need to learn more about, how to train a dog. And it's all right, people saying, oh, my dog's brilliant, I've never needed to train. That's perfect. But when you get to that situation where your dog does something, he's about to run across the road, and there's a car coming and you can't shout stop and your dog stops on a sixpence, that's when you have a problem because, boom, there's a problem. Same thing with recall. I don't need a recall, my dog always... But someday it'll happen. There'll be something that...
Yeah, there will be a circumstance where...
Train your dog. Learn about the dog. Learn about what the dog needs, its basic requirements. And you'll head a lot of these problems off.
Yeah. And we've absolutely got to take responsibility for the fact that, we might have from the outset a dog that, does things that please us or that we think, oh, it's great. Same with Marlow. I'm pleasantly surprised, he settles as he does. But... the idea that actually that needs to be challenged, because he might settle at home in a quiet environment with little distraction, but he might not settle as well when you take him to the pub or when you take him to a busy area where you want him to settle for his safety or not.
You generalise that behaviour, so you teach him in the house where there's no distractions. You then start to add in distractions in different locations so that the dog generalises that this command of settle means the same thing no matter where we are. I think it's definitely more work needs to be done on it. And the other thing that's coming up as well now, which could have an impact on it, is autism in dogs. Okay. What do they call it? Canine cognitive dysfunction.
Wow.
And a lot of these things where dogs are touch sensitive, they're putting it down to sort of still very early stages for it, is down to autism or this canine cognitive dysfunction. I think that's what they call it. And there's sort of similarities. Dogs getting naughty because they don't want to be touched. Yeah. Now again, is that something, or is that the fact that because you have a puppy, you take a puppy home, that puppy doesn't not want to be stroked. Puppies have been stroked. And they have been around humans because when the people are picking them, they have the puppy in their hands. Yeah. They stroke them like you did here. And that dog's not turning around and being aggressive at that point. So why is it doing it later on in life? How is that behaviour growing? Yeah. Is that something that comes on later on? Is this, if it is autism or if it is this, cocker rage, does it come on, is it later onset in life?
Yeah. Are we not seeing it when they're really young, but actually as they develop, does that develop? It's just all unknowns, isn't it?
And the difficulty is that, as I say, with a dog, there's so many variables because they are all in separate homes, and that's where there's 1,000,001 different...
Yeah, I can never possibly say now that any difficulties or anything, positive or negative that I come up against with Marlow, it's almost completely... not entirely in terms of where genetics come from, as in when he's been born, but actually the majority of other things. Actually, there's very little point to me saying, well, what are his brothers and sisters like? Because you get to the point where once they leave and they go to their respective homes, their experiences from 11 weeks there is no comparison whatsoever. No. Because even for the past 14, 15, 16 days that we've spent with him, every single person who now owns a brother or sister of Marlow, nothing will be the same.
And therefore, that's where the problem comes in, actually trying to figure it out, because...
You might find one in the litter that never even has that problem. You know, like we might say, for example, okay, well, several of his brothers and sisters slept through the night, but he didn't. Yeah. So there is different contributing factors to why that is. And some of it might be his personality, but also some of it might be what we did when we took him home. And you've got to be open to that.
And it's not necessarily something you've done wrong. No, it could have been that you've done something different, and he could have got to 10 o'clock at night and he'd slept more earlier on in the day. Yep. You'd done lots more different things with him, and he's like, whoa, let's play. And then you disappear or somebody who has a dog and they do very little with the dog. Yeah. You know, the dog might be, oh, well, I'm bored now, I want to do something. There's so many different factors that impact on it. But I just think that studies that come out like that, with that Campbell thing, are not helping owners.
No. Because the problem is it's setting the precedent that it is a problem, but actually there's no real world example of if you do experience it, or am I even likely to experience it? What can I do to hopefully ensure that if it is environmental factors, I won't experience it? And B, if I do experience it, who do I turn to? And those studies aren't there for that purpose, but the problem is they're contributing to a narrative that it's a problem with no real way of saying, we actually know that it's a problem. This is the diagnosis. There's so many unknowns for it even to be possible that it is a problem, isn't it? Yeah. So we can't definitively say that this is something that people should be worried about, or this is something that you can't fix and you must have to have your dog put to sleep.
The original Cocker age, of where it came from, is completely different. It was a fit. Whereas today we're talking about aggression. Aggression. Predicted. Being bitten. Yeah. And that's a world apart, and there's a million and one reasons.
It's like Chinese whispers have got it. Got it to something completely different.
It is. It's Chinese whispers. This is the problem. And I just think but it doesn't help people. You know, these people are getting misdiagnosed. You know, they've put their dogs to sleep. There's got to be, if there's one in that study, there's got to be hundreds of others who've put their dogs to sleep because they thought they had an aggressive dog on their hands.
But also a dog with and again, like we've said with the IVDD, with something that isn't modifiable in a way. Because some of these things say that they're hereditary or they're genetic, and what that says to owners is that can't be anything there's nothing that we can do about that too.
But the thing is, if it's not being investigated by trainers who understand the whole spectrum of training dogs. I had a spaniel come to us for aggression towards its owners. Okay. And long story short, it comes out that this dog has got a testosterone imbalance. And I only figured that out by having the dog here for an extended length of time. And dog was fine when I didn't have any girls in season, not a problem. Soon as there was girls in season, don't know how or why it happened, but he was just massive amounts of testosterone into his body, and therefore he wanted to fight everybody. I mean, he was fighting dogs twice his size for no reason, just because there were girls in season. And we very quickly, once we had him here constantly, we could see that when girls came into season, he just went up another gear, boom, and he was fighting, and I was pulling him apart. And we got him chemically castrated to test the theory. Perfect. Drop that level of testosterone, not a problem. But somebody who hadn't had the time, and granted not everybody can have that time, but ultimately that dog would have been put to sleep years ago because it was somebody thinking that it's just an aggressive dog. And to the owners it was. It was but there was probably a girl next door or the opposite road or one that passed on the way to the park. The dog's testosterone level goes through the roof and it decides to bite. And they said it was unpredictable.
Yeah, we've got to look at the bigger picture always.
There's so many different things. You know, to say that Cocker age is there, any dog can be aggressive under the wrong circumstances. Any dog can bite, whether it's a Chihuahua or a Looney. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. And Any dog can be, and there are so many factors that you need to put into place, from the rules in your home through to proper training, through to making sure they're bred properly, the genetics are right, the inbreeding coefficients are too high, they need to be low, to make sure you're getting the best possible option for your dog.
Yeah.
I didn't think that they were so... It was interesting because I didn't think the reports that you found, I was quite surprised at how wishy-washy they were.
Yeah. I was. And it's funny because there's a narrative of vets that are saying this isn't a thing that we know enough about. So they've got that level of transparency,
Yes.
which I think is important, because we're not owning up to that with IVDD. We're saying we know enough about it to say it's a problem. So the good thing is that we're going, actually, let's not term it that because we don't know enough, but it still exists in this idea that people
misdiagnosed by
and
vets.
put to sleep.
But the other thing is as well, if you think about it, look at it from a vet's perspective, he sees an owner, they've got a dog that's aggressive, and the owner's not trained the dog, the owner's not fulfilling the dog.
I know.
Do you say to the owner, the dog's like this because of you?
I know.
You've not done your job? Or is it easier on the owners to say, really sorry, this is a neurological problem, there's nothing you could have done about it? You know, are they...
It's like saving the dog and the owners, really, isn't it? But it's not. It's not the right way to go about it, because people need to take a different approach and a different ownership and a different... Yeah, like you put it back to those people. Well, if, you know, the dog's fine and ethically bred and the trainers are fantastic, then it's got to be you.
Well, that's it.
But we don't often look at ourselves enough, do we, to say? We have gone full circle.
To actually say, yeah, you know, they picked bad trainers. Whether the dog would have still been alive, who knows? But certainly what that trainer was doing and the results that trainer got, there was only one route for that dog, and it was going to get put to sleep. So,
Got to be conscious of that, surely.
but the thing is that it requires trainers to step away. You know, drop your egos.
Yeah.
If you can't handle this problem, walk away. Because it's a dog's life. If you've met...
It is. And to say, I've never experienced this before, I've never come across this before, but, you know, you might find somebody that has, is more responsible than to go, we can fix this with a place board, and then in 6 weeks the dog gets put to sleep because the owner can't be expected to live with it because they don't know and can't train.
Gilly's the same example. He would have been put to sleep because they just did it all wrong.
Yeah.
So
important, isn't it?
yeah, so important.
Yeah.
So, episode 2, ticked off, done.
Yeah.
Enjoyed that one.
Yeah.
I hope somebody finds this useful. I hope somebody can take something from this.
Or even just have a bit of a different consideration to some of the
I
things.
think that's the big thing. If you can take it away and look at your dog with a different light and go, it might not be what my vet's told me. It might not be what the person the road's told me because it's a solid black dog and it's got to be Cocker age. Yeah. Just look at it.
With our own health, if we're diagnosed with something, how much do we hear, get a second opinion?
Yeah. Exactly. Get a second opinion. Take the vet's opinion. Go and get a decent trainer.
Go and get several opinions. Because something will emerge.
You can get an understanding of what's going on. Yeah. But certainly things like, as I say, resource guarding, that's not Cocker age. You know, it's not. It's not. But anyway, thank you for watching. And hopefully we'll see you for episode 3.
Absolutely.
Good stuff.